I'm thankful that we had really good weather in light of what is supposedly ahead of us in the near future. So without much further ado, let's do about a 30-second countdown, and then we're going to start with a salute to the flag and the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll make a couple of quick introductions, and then we will start with our program. Thank you all for being here, and I'm going to ask you now to, when our panelists speak, so as to not break the continuity, please write down or remember your questions. At the end of everybody's speaking time, we will ask for questions for any one of them. Okay, and with that, can I ask everybody to stand and join me for Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please, a moment of silence, and of course, especially remember our brave servicemen and women. Okay, thank you very much. As we start the program, there's a few announcements that I would like to make. First, we have a new Tea Party activist with us, Sylvia Zika. Sylvia Zika, please come on up. Sylvia is the new leader and purveyor of the Warren County Tea Party. So, quick round of applause. Sylvia, say your
Thank you very much.
Talking to the mic. Mike.
Thank you very much for welcoming me. I'm delighted to be here. Today, Chairman John Clemmer, myself, and other active members said it was time for the Warren County Tea Party to become a voice in our communities. Especially for programs, for individual freedom. I'd like to share a very short, quick story with you. Very short. I was in Bermuda recently, and I went into a shopkeeper who was from Norway, Scandinavia. And I don't know why she knew I was American. I was looking at some things, and she said to me, "You're American." And I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "You know, why don't Americans see what's happening to America the way what the rest of us see?" And I thought about it for a second, and I said, I think it's because many Americans don't know what it looks like. But we know what it looks like. And so the Warren County Tea Party is increasing its organization of programs to reach out to Americans so they know really what's happening to our nation. And to accomplish this, our first priority is membership. If anyone here has family or friends in Warren County that they think might want to participate in programs that we're actively organizing, I'll be glad to give you my contact information, or Warren County Tea Party is on meetup.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next quick introduction is my longtime colleague, Israel Teitelbaum, one of Parental Rights in Education. Israel, Rabbi Teitelbaum, excuse me.
I wasn't prepared for this.
Well,
I can talk about school choice tomorrow morning, but I'll tell you just 2 minutes. I was hoping, 1 minute?
1 minute.
Okay, I'll do it in 1 minute. I have a suggestion how to solve this problem with America. If the Republicans got together and supported the Civil Rights Act for Equal Educational Opportunity, that would allow everyone in D.C. a voucher that's 50% of what they're spending now. They're spending $30,000, they'll spend $15,000. Go to whatever school they want, and then the Republicans will shout from the rooftops and say, "Let's, Democrats, join us in this." Now, what are the people going to say? If they say yes, they're out of business. If they say no, they're out of business. This is a case of heads, we win, tails, you lose. Because if the country, the poor, the downtrodden, those that are really suffering the most, when they see that they could get education for half what we're spending now, and the Democrats won't do it, only Republicans will help them, I rest my case.
And your handouts, you have some handouts?
Yeah, we have an event a week from Wednesday, the 29th, on this issue. Hopefully, we'll get the grassroots going so that they'll have an easier time, the Republicans will have an easier time doing this. We'll help them with the grassroots. Come the 29th.
And Rob Goldberg is the one who is bringing you the amplified voice and the video recording. He is the purveyor of First Amendment TV, a new initiative, and Rob also comes from East Jersey Tea Party. Rob?
Thank you, everybody. What it was, First Amendment TV, what I was trying to do was make it easier for people like this to get their message out to everyone in the conservative movement. Unfortunately, the past 2 months I was struggling trying to get people to sign up because it was a pay-per-view program and I had to stop the program for right now. So I'm going about doing it a different way. I'm going around to all Tea Party groups in the state of New Jersey, recording their videos of their meetings and then posting it on First Amendment TV on a YouTube channel I have. And hopefully I can come back with the website due to the fees to do live streaming events. Dr. Eck's healthcare town hall meeting was the first one, and it was on our launch of our opening day on December 16th, and I was live streaming that. So I'm hoping to get back to that event. But unfortunately, these things are not cheap. The operating cost alone for internet fees, streaming fees, and everything were a minimum of $4,000 a month. So that's why it was a pay-per-view service. But I'm trying to get out to everyone that what you'll see from one meeting, you won't have to travel. You'll be able to see it on First Amendment TV. So I'm still working on trying to get it going, but I'm going to need everyone's participation on YouTube. So if you have a YouTube account, when I send out the information for this recording of this event, just subscribe to the YouTube channel and you'll be getting notifications of all the upcoming events and recordings I got. Lately I've been doing a lot of recording with Joe Rullo, who was running for Senate back in 2012, and we've been reporting on political corruption. And he's been going after the Bridgegate scandal, talking about it quite a bit, so we've been getting a lot of hits on that video. We've been doing better than CNN, Fox News, and all the other liberal or conservative networks out there as far as getting people hitting on that topic. So you'll be hearing more First Amendment TV. I'm not going away that easily.
And thank you, Rob. And we will send something out to everybody. By the way, is everybody on our mailing list? If you're not, will you raise your hand and we'll take your email information? Roll, if you could give those folks. Congressman Frelinghuysen has an appointment with his boss. And so he is going to speak first, and then we will have the rest of our panelists, and then Congressman Lance. So let me start by telling you how pleased we are to have Congressman Frelinghuysen here, who represents, as I'm sure almost all of you know, New Jersey's 11th Congressional District. And what impresses me most, that you are in a 10th term incumbent, and I have seen him out to breakfasts, walking the streets, knocking on the doors, when in all likelihood, and I don't want to say this too loudly, he probably doesn't have to and would still win for as long as he wanted to. So he still goes out, knocks on the door. He is the newest chairman of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Defense, with a budget of almost $500 billion, that's trillion with a T, folks, dollars, from which he has already paired almost 30 billion with a B. With great pleasure, give a great welcome to Congressman Rodney.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight, and obviously some of you are repeat offenders. And you should know that Leonard and I and all of those up at the panel appreciate your vigilance. We appreciate your advocacy. We appreciate your strong opinions. And understandably, we're not always going to agree on every issue. But be assured that we are listening, because I think there are a lot of problems that our nation faces. And one of those, obviously, we're seeing what was wrought under Nancy Pelosi's leadership, the Obamacare. I probably heard from more of my constituents on the rollout of Obamacare that this isn't the website. This is the things that are happening that separate you from your doctors, things that are happening in our hospitals. We have some of the best hospitals in the nation right in our backyard here. And a lot of those hospitals are getting bigger, higher deductibles, higher premiums, choice. Israel, I want you to know, of course, on education, while we don't totally agree, it was my bill when I chaired the District of Columbia Appropriations Committee that actually introduced school vouchers into the equation. And you can thank President Obama for doing away with them. But I know that Congressman Lance and I want to restore the DC Scholarship Program and to empower parents so they can send their children to schools that are not failing. Let me say, too, that I think in the interest of transparency, I serve on the House Appropriations Committee. I know that we can never meet your desire to totally do away with all appropriations. But I do feel, as part of now the Republican leadership in the House, that our discretionary spending, we haven't addressed the other side of that equation. And we need to do it, of course, carefully. Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. Discretionary spending in the recently passed Consolidated Act is actually down below what it was when Obama took office. I know that doesn't satisfy people, but this discretionary spending is down, and it has been going down over the last 4 years. And the Defense Department their defense spending is going down at a time, quite honestly, when I think our nation faces even greater risk. And part of the job of being a member of Congress is to take a look at how much risk we are exposed to. We're in a VFW hole. And as we speak here, people may not know it, we have about 40,000 of our fellow citizens who volunteer to serve in the military, serving in Afghanistan and other parts, and many more serving in other parts of the world, some in the Sinai, some doing some important work along the Korean Peninsula, in Japan, on ships, in subs. And I know that while we may disagree on some of the budget numbers, I know that you share your pride in what they do. We can hate war, but we do love the warfighter, and they're doing a remarkable job. But I know that you're committed. I'm committed to a balanced budget. It's something that we need to have. I think we're coming to a point here, given sort of the political dynamics, that there's a really good possibility that we're going to have a Republican Senate.
Here, yeah, let's have a round of applause for that.
Let me stop there, and I know Leonard tells me he has another engagement. Do you want to?
I would like to speak.
Okay, bring him up. Come on up. Is that all right, Jeff?
Well, you know what,
Equal time.
let me at least give an introduction, and because this is going to be a panel discussion, we will make sure that you get the video of this so that you can respond.
I'll stay a little while.
Great. Congressman Leonard Lance is now midway through his third term as U.S. Representative from New Jersey's 7th Congressional District, which includes parts of Essex, Morris, Somerset, Union, Warren counties, as well as all of Hunterdon. And I will do everything I can to make sure Leonard wins a 4th term later this year, as well as a 5th term should he want it under a Republican Senate and a Republican President in 2016. Applause. Thank you. In 2011, Congressman Lance was appointed to the Committee on Energy and Commerce, which has a broad legislative jurisdiction. I have to read this. National Energy, Environmental Policy, Health and Health Facilities, Interstate and Foreign Commerce, Consumer Affairs and Consumer Protection, and Travel and Tourism. Like I said, Obamacare. So we absolutely support your latest efforts to dismantle Obamacare. Hold Health and Human Services Secretary Sebelius responsible, along with her boss, to cut spending, lower debt, and listen to what we, the people who are your constituents and all elected people's constituents, have to say. Stop Obamacare, stop Obama's extra-constitutional exercise of power, continue investigating DHS ammo buys, and HHS Secretary Sebelius. With that, Congressman Leonard Lance.
Thank you, Jeff, for that overly generous introduction. It's always a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me to be here yet again this evening. First of all, Rodney is being much too modest. The Appropriations Committee, ladies and gentlemen, is the committee that actually appropriates the funds of the federal government. And the person who has been involved in defense appropriations the longest, a member of Congress from Florida, Congressman Young, passed away. And he was the longest serving Republican member of the Congress, currently seated in the 113th Congress. And unfortunately, he died. And Rodney, who had had responsibilities in another subcommittee of appropriations, recently, in the middle of a term, became the chairman of arguably the most important subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee, which deals with defense, essential to this nation. And obviously, we all favor a strong defense. Now, Rodney is uniquely able to chair that subcommittee because as a young man, he went to Vietnam and was a sergeant in Vietnam. And as you know, his father at that time was in the Congress of the United States, and there were bloody few children of members of Congress who actually went to Vietnam. And Rodney Proctor Frelinghuysen was among them. Would you please join me in thanking the Congressman? And let me make another prediction. We Republicans are going to control the House of Representatives after the election in November. I see no way that the Democrats can regain control of the House. We Republicans in the House of Representatives believe in term limits on who serves as our chairs. Democrats don't do that. When the Democrats are in control of the House of Representatives, their chairs can be chairs forever. There is a 6-year term limit internally imposed by the Republican members of the House on chairs of our committees. The current chair of the full House Appropriations Committee will be term limited at the end of this term, Congressman Rogers of Kentucky. Congressman Kingston of Georgia is running for the United States Senate. There is a significant primary in Georgia this year for an open United States Senate seat. And Congressman Kingston, who is high up on the Appropriations Committee, will be leaving the House of Representatives because he's running in a primary in Georgia for the United States Senate. We have in our presence this evening the person, in my judgment, who come next January of 2015, is likely to be the chairman of the full Appropriations Committee in the House of Representatives, Congressman Freeholder. I call a spade. He will be then among the 3 or 4 most important members of the Congress of the United States. And I think that it is important for the people in the 11th Congressional District here in Morris County and in neighboring counties as well to recognize that Rodney, come next January, will be even more influential than he is at the moment, extremely influential as he is at the moment. On the budget that was just passed that Rodney mentioned, and this is only for discretionary spending. This is not for Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid or the other mandatory programs, but on the part of the budget where we actually have some control. We are lowering spending. In FY 2010, it was $1.275 trillion. 2011, $1.211 trillion. Lowered because of the election of a Republican House of Representatives. 2012, $1.18 trillion. Last year, based upon sequestration, and sequestration came about, as you know, based upon our discussions with the President and the Senate, $1.132 trillion. And the budget we've just passed, $1.110 trillion. Obviously, too much money, but steps in the right direction, lowering spending. I think this is the first time since the Korean War that spending has been lowered several years in a row. This is discretionary spending. What we have to do is get a handle on mandatory spending, Social Security and Medicare. And I want to work with colleagues in Washington, in both the House and the Senate, moving forward to make sure that we can reform those programs so that they will be available for future generations. To that end, we have to re-elect the Republican House of Representatives, and that means, of course, here in New Jersey, there are 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats. There is an open Republican seat because Congressman Runyon is retiring after 2 terms. And that is not a safe Republican seat, and let's hope that we can continue to have Republican control of that seat. And then Dr. Eck, I believe, will be a candidate for a seat currently represented by a Democratic member of Congress. And if Dr. Eck wishes to describe further who that Democratic member of Congress is, I leave that to Dr. Eck. But Dr. Eck will be running for Congress in a currently held Democratic seat. So I am sure this audience wishes to encourage creating more Republican opportunities in the House here in New Jersey. That brings me to the United States Senate, or as we say on the floor of the House, the other body. The other body. Perhaps an out-of-body experience. We need to gain the seat in West Virginia, an open seat. Jay Rockefeller is retiring. Our friend, Shelley Moore Capito, is without doubt the leading candidate, and I believe will be elected senator from West Virginia. The first Republican since the 1950s in West Virginia. We need to win the open seat in Montana. We need to win the open seat in South Dakota. We need to defeat the incumbent in Alaska. We need to defeat the incumbent in Louisiana. We need to defeat the incumbent in Arkansas, and we need to defeat the incumbent in North Carolina. We are at 45 now, 45. We need 5 for there to be a 50-50 split. That's not good enough, because Vice President Biden would break the tie. We need to gain 6 seats to go into the majority. We are at 45 now. We need to gain 6 seats to reach 51. We have a race here in New Jersey. At the moment, the Republicans do not have a candidate against Senator Booker. And I know that Steve Lonigan has indicated he may be seeking the nomination in the open seat in southern New Jersey, but I think, given his name recognition, he might want to consider running again for the United States Senate, because I thought he did very well last autumn, and with a little more momentum, I think he could have done even better. That's for him to decide. but I certainly want a strong candidate. I don't want to concede the U.S. Senate seat here in New Jersey, although I recognize it is an uphill battle. The way we can get to the root of Obamacare is obviously to have Republican control of the United States Senate. If we do not gain control this year, we will not gain control in 2016, in my judgment, because many of the initial elections in 2010, a strong Republican year, will come up for re-election in 2016, and that will be a more difficult environment than 2014. I think our best chance to get control of the United States Senate is this year, and the issue, obviously, will be Obamacare. This leads to other opportunities. At the moment, it is thought that the seat in Virginia is going to become competitive because the incumbent, Senator Warner, who was supposed to be re-elected easily, is now being challenged by Ed Gillespie, who worked in the Bush White House. Ed Gillespie's nephew, John Tates, is on my staff in Washington. Ed Gillespie is a first-rate candidate. And if Virginia is in contention, then the Democrats are really in a lot of trouble. But before we get to the November election, we in the House of Representatives will continue to remain strong, as we did, lowering spending in the domestic portion of the budget and the Defense Department, the discretionary spending, as Rodney and I have described. We have to remain strong on, for example, the issues that Israel so brilliantly and consistently advocates, and that's why Rodney and I support Speaker Boehner in his continued support for vouchers in Washington, D.C., and John Boehner really has taken the lead on this issue, and that is why we have to be continuing our efforts to investigate what is occurring. This document that we've just passed, for example, requires DHS to provide detailed reports on the purchase and use of ammunition.
Yes.
That is contained in the bill. I have raised this issue here previously based upon a question from one of those in the audience at a prior meeting. The bill slashes $1 billion from the fund to pay for Obamacare, slashes $10 million from IPAB, that's that unelected board that I think should never have existed in the first place, increases funding for private security contractors at airports and slashes funding for the TSA, provides $220 million more for Customs and Border Protection, bans the Obama administration from transferring Gitmo detainees to the United States of America, $2.8 billion for detention programs operated by ICE, the highest detention capacity in history, and prohibits the IRS, ladies and gentlemen, from targeting groups for regulatory scrutiny based on their ideological beliefs or to target citizens for exercising their First Amendment rights. Now, I believe that we should be investigating Benghazi and the IRS to the same extent as any other investigation in the United States. And I'm not suggesting that it's not appropriate to have investigation on other matters. But I do believe the most challenging situation regarding the untoward behavior of the Obama administration may be Obamacare, but it may also be the scandal at the IRS, because that goes to the heart of our First Amendment rights to speak and write our beliefs, whatever those beliefs may be. Finally, let me say that it's always a pleasure to be with Jeff, to be with you. I will stay for some of the other speakers. I know there's a very distinguished panel, but I want this group to know that I'm proud to serve with Congressman Frelinghuysen. We serve together in the state legislature, and I think you should be very proud here in this part of Morris County that he is your representative, and I hope in western Morris County and out in Warren County that I try to serve you to the best of my ability as well. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
I scoot out of here, I apologize.
Thank you, Congressman Frelinghuysen, and thank you, Congressman Lance, who, by the way, brought up House Majority Leader Eric Cantor for a wonderful event yesterday. Thank you so very much for that, Congressman. I would like to start our panel with the person who came from furthest away. Somebody that I'm looking forward to, who is my colleague, but looking forward to calling my friend. Daniel Garza is a self-described Christian. He is the executive director of the Libre initiative. His former life included stints as White House staffer, Univision anchor, and farm worker. His father, Cubano? Mexicano. Mexicano, disculpe. His father shared his appreciation for America, which has stayed with him, and gave him the greatest advice: you can make it here with just three things: God, good credit, and freedom. We met last year at a private party for Senator Ted Cruz at Billionaire, that's with a B, publisher of Mort Zuckerman's house, who was having a party for Senator Cruz. So my friend Daniel Garza does indeed have friends in high places. With that, a Morristown Tea Party organization welcome for Daniel Garza.
I was looking forward to being friends. I thought we were. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be in front of you today. I did fly in from Texas this morning. Be flying back, or actually flying to DC before I fly back to Texas, where it's 80 degrees. It's freezing over here. But Jeffrey invited me because he wanted me to talk to you about the kind of work that we're doing at the Libre Initiative and the kind of impact we're having. And maybe, express some of the lessons learned to other conservative organizations on how to do effective outreach to the Hispanic community across the country. The Libre Initiative launched in 2011, middle of 2011, right before the 2012 election cycle. We targeted both Florida and Nevada. And what we do is advance the principles of economic freedom, because we feel that those principles are the ones that improve human well-being. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? Make life better for our neighbors and for our family. So, by driving these principles of limited government, sound money, rule of law, free enterprise, private property, principles that were mostly responsible for the United States becoming the most prosperous and most powerful nation in the history of the world, that allowed us to make profit from our creativity, from our talents, from finding our comparative advantage and taking that to market. That worked for America 200 years ago, and those principles still work for America today. But unfortunately, this administration seems to be bent on focusing on growing government, the control and the power that government has in our lives, and ceding decision-making on matters of church, of family, of the markets, to the government, to bureaucrats, to control our lives. And so, because I had worked at the White House with a bunch of friends, because we had sort of collectively, in our discussions prior to leaving, said, there really is not an organization at the national level, at a national scale, that drives these principles, that talks about these principles on Univision or on Telemundo or what have you in the Spanish language media, and counters the progressives. For decades now, since the 1960s, Hispanic nonprofit organizations like National Council of La Raza, LULAC, how much time do I have? I want to be respectful of time. LULAC and MALDEF and Acacia and Chicanos por la Causa out of Arizona and Casa Maryland out of Maryland, not Casa Virginia, had been advocating for the Hispanic community, for the interests and the well-being of the Hispanic community. But the kind of principle or the kind of policy change that they were driving for was one that grew, or it was more dependency inducing, one that grew public assistance, that that in a sense actually made them of value to the Hispanic community, to become trusted advocates in the Hispanic community. So by providing and by gaining actually federal monies, state monies, local monies to provide child care, transportation, immigration help, all these kind of things, they were providing stopgap services, real services that could help the Hispanic community, give them a hand up. And by doing this, they gained massive data, they gained the trust of the community, and then of course, what happened was that they were tied into the other side, the left, the progressives, and shared the data, and did canvassing, and phone calls, and outreach, and won over media giants like Univision and Telemundo, and celebrities like J-Lo and Ricky Martin, and what have you, to speak on their behalf. And then of course the unions, and they married with the unions. In California, very early on in the 70s, Cesar Chavez joined with the unions and became a powerhouse, advocating on behalf of the Hispanic community. Ronald Reagan was governor of California. Ronald Reagan was against the unions. Ipso facto, Ronald Reagan was against Hispanics. That was the message. That was the demonization that was going on. Anybody who was against unions was against Hispanics, and anybody who was against immigration reform was against Hispanics. And that was the message. And since then, they've advocated for more government, for more public assistance. And so who was countering the message? Who was out there saying, no, we have to turn to the market. We have to turn to entrepreneurship, to risk-taking. These are the kind of things that are going to grow wealth, generate prosperity, real jobs and real growth within the Hispanic community so they can all rise. Instead of looking to subsistence, instead of looking for a mediocre life dependent on government, there really was nobody. There was one guy from the Heritage Foundation, one guy from the Leadership Institute, and then maybe one guy from the Cato Institute, but he did more international. And then you're really hard-pressed to figure out who was doing the day-to-day outreach, the engagement. So we launched, and I'm sorry about that big prologue and preface to that, but we launched in 2011. We are now at 35 full-time staff across the country. We're in 8 states. We'll be at 10 states by the end of this year, and we're looking to come into New Jersey and New York as well, which is why I'm here today. We have a 3-pronged approach. We hit media hard. We hit both English and Spanish. And I know there's discussions within the conservative movement, why Spanish? They have to learn English. I agree. But we don't have the resources to teach 17 million Hispanics how to speak English from one day to the next. It's not possible. So we have to engage in Spanish, and we do that. And I'm not going to limit myself to not engaging in Spanish, because at the end of the day, it's about communication. It's about communicating your principles and your message. And so you use the tools and the platforms that are made available to you. So we are constantly on Univision at the local level, at the local affiliate level, and at the national level as well. We're in the programs, we're in the news, we're the counter voice, we're on Telemundo, but we're also on MSNBC, we're also on Fox, and we're also on the networks. I just had a column written in the USA Today about how Obamacare is an insult to Hispanics. This was about 3 days ago, and it's been circulated nationwide. So we've been really pleased. Our numbers are, into the millions and millions of folks who are now listening to our message. We have submitted and published editorials on every major Spanish language newspaper across the country. El Heraldo, El Diario Nueva York, La Opinión en Los Angeles. We're in Seattle, Chicago, you name it. When you have 35 people and now building up to 50, we have that kind of access. So we're not only now, I'm going to wrap it up real quick just in case you're getting worried. We're not only on the defense, blocking and tackling for the conservative voices and conservative elected officials, but we're also on the offense. So we have a 7-figure ad buy attacking 2 congressmen in specific. Joe Garcia out of Florida in District 26, and also Pete Gallego in District 23 out of Texas, for supporting Obamacare, for continuing to support Obamacare despite the fact that it's been hurtful and harming to the Hispanic community. So on Spanish language and on English language television, we're coming after them hard. And in fact, they both have had to respond on Univision to our attacks. In fact, Cecilia Munoz, who is a domestic policy council director for President Barack Obama, who came from National Council of La Raza, who, by the way, in 2011, their federal monies were $4 million. By 2012, when she came on board, was $12 million. That's how much they grew in federal funding. Cecilia Munoz sent an editorial to Univision.com attacking us for attacking them. So we have them on their heels. We have them on the defense, for once. I just want to let you know that this movement is growing. Hispanics are embracing the message of free markets and free enterprise. They are entrepreneurial. Hispanics open up new businesses at 2 times the national rate. Hispanic women at 3 times the national rate. So I'm just going to leave you with this. We have to preach beyond the choir. We have to go beyond the folks that just show up to our meetings, and we have to go to where they're at. That means media platforms, their communities, their churches, their colleges and universities, where they are at their schools. I was just in Yonkers and talking about to the school supervisors and how we're going to outreach to the parents as well. We have to, communication has to be simple, and it has to be on the offense as well. We have to challenge the narratives and the demonization that has been going on of conservatives for decades now. They think you hate them. That's what they've heard for decades now. So we have to show them that we care, because we really do. And we have to step up, because as a society, we need to take care of those who are truly dependent. Children, by their very nature, are dependent, and we need to take care of them. The disabled and some senior citizens are dependent. And as a society, we take care of them. But those who are able-bodied, we need to make sure we're looking out for them by creating jobs, economic opportunities. That's the difference, and that's what we need to talk about. All issues are Hispanic, not just immigration. All of them. Everything has to do with economics, household economics, college tuition rates. Everything is on the table when you talk to the Hispanics. As candidates, earn their respect by talking to them beyond just the issue of immigration, please. And this really isn't an issue of white people trying to convince Hispanics, we really, really do like you. That's not it. It's conservatives engaging other conservatives. That's the perspective you need to take into the Hispanic community. Show up, go in, meet with them. As Jose Malea, our field director, says, he ran Marco Rubio's campaign for Senate. He says, go into the community, engage with them. They're not going to hurt you. They won't, I promise. And lastly, I just want to say, please, we're a resource. We want to be helpful. We want to echo the conservative message. And we've now gained the trust of the Hispanic community. We are trusted advocates. We are providing community building resources. Read about us. Jeffrey, maybe you can send some links out. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'd be happy to engage. Thank you.
Daniel, thank you so much. And before I introduce Dr. Eck, Congressman Lance, can I ask you to consider networking with Daniel Garza, if there's a possibility of bringing him before a congressional committee to tell him.
The first thing I did was give Daniel my card, and therefore he gave me his card. But I want you to know I gave him my card first. I didn't give Alieta my card. I've known Alieta for quite some time, or the Freeholder. But the first thing I did was give Daniel my card, and we have got to reach out to everybody in America, ladies and gentlemen. We simply can't be a party that looks like me. We have got to reach out to everybody in America, and the Hispanic community is family-oriented, is entrepreneurial, and as a matter of practical politics, I'm so old that I can remember when California was a Republican-leaning state. Dwight Eisenhower carried it twice. Richard Nixon carried it 3 times. 3 times. He beat John Kennedy in California. Ronald Reagan carried it. And the original President Bush carried it in 1988. We cannot simply dismiss the largest state in the Union. Florida is ground zero as to who will win the presidency. And if we don't watch out, Texas will become a swing state and eventually a Democratic state. It is as simple as that. And New Jersey has a large and vibrant Hispanic community, particularly in northeastern New Jersey. And certainly we have to engage the Hispanic community, which is family-centered, deeply religious, and entrepreneurial. And after all, most of those who came to New Jersey in the Hispanic community came from tyranny in places like Cuba. And so certainly we have to work together. I want to thank you for permitting me to be with you. Thank you, Jeffrey. I always look forward to being with you. And to the other panelists, I'm sure that your messages will be as vibrant and as exciting as certainly Daniel's has been. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Congressman, just so you know, I'm scheduled to give a presentation at the Republican retreat in Maryland with Rachel Campos Duffy, so I'm looking forward to it.
I'm going to that retreat, so I'll be taking notes and making sure that I introduce Daniel to all my colleagues. The retreat is in 2 weeks, and it's in Cambridge, Maryland. Thank you. Thank you. Do you have a question of me? Yes.
Yes, I have a question.
Certainly.
Congressman, thank you for being here.
Certainly.
We've been talking a lot tonight and a lot more about the Republican umbrella and
Yes.
being bigger
Yes.
and all-inclusive.
I hope.
But at the same time, we have Boehner, McConnell, Karl Rove, and the Chamber of Commerce declaring war on the conservatives and everyone in this room. I wonder what you have been doing, what you intend to do, and what you are doing now to change this travesty, or on a national level, we will never win another election.
I think we have to be united, and that's obviously why I speak at every group I'm invited to speak. That's why I've spoken to this group on several occasions, and thank you for inviting me again tonight. And I'm a great believer in trying to unify people and not trying to divide people. And what I have said in the past and will continue to say is that the Tea Party is an essential component of a larger whole, and we should not be reading people out of the Republican Party. Rather, we should be encouraging people to join the Republican Party. And the principal motivation of the Tea Party, in my judgment, is fiscal responsibility.
Here, here.
And that is what unites us as Republicans, fiscal responsibility. And I want you to know that in my remarks to Tea Party groups and to other groups, I am consistent in my remarks that the Tea Party groups across America and here in New Jersey are an essential component of a larger whole, and that larger whole is fiscal responsibility. And I will always be of those views, and I will continue to articulate those views.
But that message isn't getting across to people like Boehner. Why the declaring of the war? The Chamber of Commerce now they have on us. The message is not winning. Whatever you're doing has to be changed, Congressman. We need your help, because this divide should be done away with.
I absolutely agree that we have to be unified, and I will continue to be a voice to making sure we are as unified as possible. And this is based upon my reading of American history. The Republican Party is strongest when it is unified, and of course Ronald Reagan unified the Republican Party, but even before that, when President Eisenhower was first running in 1952, he reached out to his opponent in the primary, Senator Taft, and famously they came together to make sure that that was a winning year for Republicans. And unless we continue to build to complete unity, we will not win the election in 2016.
But the Romney election should be a good example and should be a good lesson for us all. If we're not learning, we're getting even worse.
I hope not, and I want to be unified this year, and I'm certainly doing my best to make sure that we are unified. Yes. Where do you live in Warren County?
Blairstown.
That's Scott Garrett.
Yes.
I represented Blairstown for almost 20 years in the state legislature, however.
Many Americans today are extremely disillusioned with elected officials they believe do not represent them. Would you support a term limit bill? If so, what would the term be? And if not, why not?
regarding term limits at the federal level, that would require a constitutional amendment. And I think it's not likely that a constitutional amendment could pass because it would require a 2/3 vote in both houses and ratification by 3/4 of the state legislatures. This is regarding term limits for members of Congress. Now, I would imagine that it would not affect me personally because I've not been in Congress for a very long time. It would, however, affect Congressman Frelinghuysen.
And what have you?
Excuse me, can we,
And-
because
and
of so many folks...
Let me say that I think that it's important that Rodney Frelinghuysen be the chairman of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, and eventually, I hope in January of 2015, of the full committee, and that is because of his seniority. A term limits bill probably would not affect me because I've not been in Congress very long. It certainly would affect someone like Rodney, and I think he's doing a terrific job. Yes, one more question.
Hi, Congressman Lentz. I think the issue that both you and Mr. Garza are talking about when we talk about the Hispanic community is that big question of the immigration. So I'd be curious whether you think and whether Mr. Garza think that reaching out to the Hispanic community necessarily means granting illegal aliens amnesty. In which case, I would argue Texas will become a Democratic state forevermore, and once we lose Texas, it will never be possible to elect a Republican ever again.
I agree. I certainly agree we need Texas in the Republican column. And I do not favor amnesty, and I don't think amnesty could pass the House of Representatives. As you know, the Senate passed a bill. It was one bill, and I think the House is going to address this issue piece by piece. And I do not think there are the votes in the House, and there is certainly not my vote, to grant citizenship to those who came as adults not appropriately and did not stand in line. And so I don't think that that could pass the House of Representatives. Having said that, I do think that there are other areas where we can indicate to the Hispanic community that we share their values of strength in family, religious faith, and the entrepreneurial spirit that has brought many in the Hispanic community to this country legally. And I cite, for example, the Cubans who came here, including to northern New Jersey, based upon the tyranny of the Castro regime. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, maybe if Mr. Garza would like to address that.
Could we hold up on Mr. Garza's answer until after the folks have spoken?
Thank you very much. Do you have a question, sir?
I'm not sure if it was you or Congressman Frelinghuysen talking about Benghazi and the IRS.
Yes.
But it's John Boehner that can call a special prosecutor, I believe, or actually have a full investigation of this, but it's not happening. So talk is good, but if it doesn't happen, it's...
Regarding the investigations, Darrell Issa is heading up the investigation. He's the chairman of the committee, and I think he's doing a terrific job. Unfortunately, we in the Congress do not have the power to call for a prosecutor. That's an administrative decision. I suppose we could ask for a prosecutor, but I don't think that this administration would likely grant a prosecutor.
Yeah, I concur that ICE is doing a fine job, but I don't think he's getting very much help.
I think that Darrell Issa has the full support of the leadership. Now, I'm not in leadership, but I do think that Darrell Issa is doing a terrific job, and certainly I support Congressman Issa. One more question. Yes. There are very distinguished panelists here.
And I thank you all for coming. First of all, I applaud what you all do, but there's always more to be done.
Yes.
That being said, a few months ago at another meeting that you and I were at, I raised the question of Common Core. And at the time you said, send you information.
Yes.
I did, and that you would look into
Yes.
it. Have you had the opportunity to look into it? What have you done? What do you intend to do about this intrusion, invasion, and the dumbing down of our children, simply? So have you done anything about that, or can you?
Thank you. I did receive your information. Thank you, sir. That comes before the Education Committee, on which I do not serve, but I believe that there are those on the Education Committee in the House of Representatives who share your concerns. And let me say that I want as well educated a next generation as possible, because obviously the competition that exist in this country is largely economic once we overcome the threat of terrorism. And other places in the world, including places in Asia, are doing an extremely fine job in education, particularly in math and science. And as I speak to young people, as I do virtually every weekend, particularly Eagle Scouts, the competition of their generation will be based upon a strong educational system in this country. And I certainly agree with those who believe that we should strengthen the educational system and not in any way dumb it down, because the 21st century will either be a second American century or leadership will pass to some other place, presumably in Asia, where there are very strong test scores, particularly in math and science. And I have repeated my views on this virtually every weekend as I attend ceremonies with young people, usually with Eagle Scouts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman. When I first started with the Tea Party movement, shortly after Rick Santelli's rant in February of 2009, I was pretty sure even back then that Obamacare was going to be the most important issue for years to come. When I related this to my friends down south, most notably Congressman Joe Uli Wilson and his staffers and friends, they quickly and definitively assured me that if there was one issue, it was the Second Amendment. And down through the years, different respected groups, individuals, and friends have assured me at one time or another that it was right to life was a single issue, or gay rights was a single issue, or DOMA, or pot decriminalization, legalization, immigration, or some thought it was minimum wage, Iran sanctions, no insurance company bailouts, etc. And you know what? Every one of them was right, because perception is reality. And those folks who believe it, they are right for themselves. And that goes along with the other thing that I hear all too often, and I'm sorry the congressman left before he gets to hear this, but people say, he's a rhino, she's a rhino, and I ask myself, so what's a rhino? And I've come to the conclusion that a rhino is any elected official or person that disagrees with me or the way I think. So with that in mind, I want everybody here to know how appreciative I am that we have all these different demographics who are represented. Daniel Garza, obviously, represents the Hispanics. Hank Lyon is a millennial. Alieta Eck is two. She is medical and female. And John Traier is a representative of the gay community. All of these folks must fit comfortably in the Republican tent if we are to win 2014 and beyond. Alieta Eck, Dr. Eck, graduated from Rutgers College of Pharmacy in New Jersey and the St. Louis School of Medicine. In 2003, she and her husband John, where's Dr. John? He's home. Founded Zarephath Health Center that has now grown to, what, 5,000 square feet? Amazing. It's a free clinic for the poor and uninsured that currently cares for 300 to 400, up from, you started at 30 per month. Dr. Eck has testified before Congress. Lastly, she testified before a U.S. Senate hearing in 2011 that was chaired on the one hand by Bernie Sanders, who's the most socialist senator, and on the extreme other pole by Rand Paul. She and I were part of the New Jersey 2011 project that helped bring these issues to the fore in New Jersey. In 2012, Dr. Eck served as the president nationally of the American Association of Physicians and Surgeons. And as many of you know, Dr. Eck ran her first race for U.S. Senate against Steve Lonigan, had to get 1,000 signatures and wound up getting 2,000 plus in less than a week. and now is going to run against Rush Holt in the 12th Congressional District. It is with great pleasure and privilege that I introduce you to Dr.
Thank you very much. I've been here before, I've spoken with you before, and it's good to be back. I want to tell you about a patient that I saw at the Zarephath Health Center. It's a free clinic, people don't get charged. I met her a year and a half ago. She had broken her femur, which is the big leg bone, 2.5 years ago. She was on Medicaid, and it's never been fixed. She's in pain, she is in a wheelchair, and I began to think there's something really crazy about this story. It can't be. This is America, Medicaid. It's a program for the poor. Certainly they can get care. Well, it turns out she had some kind of infection. They treated that, and by the time it was time to do surgery, the surgeons looked at her as this is a complicated case now, and if we operate on her, and I know this is what's going on in the back of their mind, if we operate on her, we will get paid this much, and we will have infinite liability. So they said, well, maybe you should go to a tertiary center. And here's this woman, she had no way to really navigate the system very well. Well, I got behind her and said, I'll figure this out. I started making phone calls to find out exactly what happened. And we've gotten to the point where she's in the hospital right now, she fell again, and I found a surgeon. I said, well, who's the best surgeon, orthopedist? And I said, you know something? We will pay the surgeon to operate, and whatever it costs, the Zarephath Health Center is going to pay. And so we found a wonderful surgeon who looked at her and said, this could be complicated. We're going to have to lengthen her leg now by 4 inches, and it's going to be hard, but we're going to do it. And I'm happy. She's 51 years old. And finally, we're going to get the care that she needs. Today I saw a patient at the Zarephath Health Center, and these are stories that come up every time I see them. She is married. Her husband is a trained landscape architect. She suffered from sexual abuse when she was a child, so all that's starting to come back to her. He lost his job. They're having tremendous financial problems now. They have, she has an eating disorder. She's depressed. 3 children, 12 and under. She has a church that's helping them pay their mortgage so they can keep their house. But then what's going to happen? And I realize that life is really hard. It's hard for a lot of people in America, and there's just, something has really gone wrong with our economy. The cost of living is higher, tax burden is higher, especially in New Jersey, and it seems like the ruling class down in Washington, D.C. doesn't seem to get it. Washington, D.C. is a very prosperous city. The money seems to flow there, and there's a lot of just money for just doing what we want, and we'll give you a campaign contribution, something else will happen. And to me, that's corruption. And that's why our Constitution put limits on what government could do. That's been totally ignored. We have a government that the people can't afford, said Steve Sweeney. And he is the New Jersey Senate Majority Leader, a Democrat. Well, you think Obamacare is going to make things better? No. Obamacare is going to take the 1 million people that are on Medicaid and turn it into 2 million people. And the way that they entice New Jersey to take the Medicaid money is says, oh, we'll pay 100% of all these new people that are going to be coming on for a couple of years. But it's like giving somebody a gift of a baby elephant and 3 years worth of hay, and then after that you're on your own. And that's what's going to happen. We're going to somehow have to pay for all of this. Medicaid is a totally broken program, and it's built on all kinds of false promises, as with this woman that I just described. The young are going to stay away from Obamacare, and pretty well they're ignoring it as they're not signing up. And buying Obamacare insurance is not going to increase access to care. In fact, it's not going to guarantee that there's going to be physicians that are going to take it. Who knows what Obamacare is going to pay? Here's another thing. People are going to game the system. You sign up for Obamacare, don't pay your premium. You get this card. The doctor honors your card. The insurance company realizes you didn't pay the premium. The doctor will probably never get paid. And then, oh, well, maybe we'll pay a premium for a couple of months and then stop again. And the insurance companies have no way, there's no provision in the law to ensure that the person who's buying Obamacare insurance has any kind of track record of paying their bills. So it could be somebody with terrible credit, sign up for Obamacare, and the insurance company has to take them. Small businesses are looking for an escape. So they'll figure out a way to maybe self-insure for the healthy people in their business, and those who are not so healthy will go off into the Obamacare, the exchanges, and pretty well you're just going to have unhealthy people into the exchanges, and it's going to get more and more expensive, and it's going to collapse. Employers are dumping the plans. In fact, what they're doing is taking people that are working 37 hours and going down to 29 and a half. That's I'm seeing people in our clinic. And these are people that are really on marginal income, and not to get those hours cut, it's devastating. The reason why healthcare has become so expensive has been the combining of routine care with what's insurable. If you had to pay homeowners insurance that would pay for leaky faucets, can you imagine what the health insurance or the homeowners insurance would cost? Very, very expensive. And it just totally violates the entire insurance principle. The number of physicians has increased by 150% in the past 30 years or so. The number of people who just fill in papers and who do the coding and do the documentation specialists and all of these things related to paperwork and billing has gone up 3,000%. So no wonder healthcare costs so much. Is it really healthcare? Is it really people getting better care? No. And Obamacare is just here to make things worse. Well, already our economy is struggling, so how can New Jersey or any other state afford this huge, big government program? They cannot. Well, there's 3 levels of care as far as I look at it. I think we should be paying, or just paying out of pocket for the small things, like you get your oil changed, buy insurance for the big stuff, and then for people who can afford neither, we have true charity. Not government charity, but true charity. What is true charity? True charity is people, out of the goodness of their heart, seeing somebody in need and helping them. And there's a way that we can do it. Medicaid takes up 1/3 of the New Jersey budget. It's 1/3 of the average budget of the states, some even higher. A huge amount of the state budget for a program that's very bureaucratic and doesn't really get the job done. So, our clinic, the cost to provide care is $13 per patient visit. Because when everybody's volunteering, you're not paying a lot of salaries, you're having true charity, and all you're paying for is the light, and you're paying for the electricity, and you might be buying some medicine, but $13 per patient visit, none from taxpayers. A federally qualified health center that the federal government has is $160 per patient visit. The most of that money is coming from the government, the taxpayers. And when you look at their Form 990s, they're spending a lot of money on things that I wouldn't dream of spending money on. Like next town over, their budget's $15 million, and they're spending $300,000 on travel expenses. Our whole budget is $65,000, none from the taxpayers. So I'm telling you, there's a far better way of doing charity. That's why we have Bill S-2231 in New Jersey. I guess now that it's a new year, it's going to get a new number. But it was introduced a year and a half ago. We're waiting for the Senate Health Committee Chairman, Senator Vitale, to bring it up for a hearing. And for some reason, he's just, I don't know what is holding him back. Even Senator Sweeney thinks it's a good idea. We have bipartisan support. We've been talking to the different senators, and they're all saying, this is a good idea. And this bill would give malpractice protection to the private practices of doctors who donate 4 hours a week in a clinic like ours, a non-government free clinic. So the care has no cost to the taxpayers. That's what we're trying to do. So what would we accomplish by that? Think about it. Now you would have the taxpayers being relieved from the cost of care. $13 billion we're spending on Medicaid in New Jersey, so that could start to get pared down. And then you have the community involved, and there's personalized care. Now the neighbors are coming in, and they're struggling, and there's other things, they need food and clothing, and what else is going on, and you lift them out of that so they can get a job. Whereas right now, the Medicaid system's a trap. They now have insurance, they think it's insurance, and if they get a job or if they get well, they lose it. So all the incentives are in the wrong direction on the Medicaid system. Anyway, we could save a huge amount of money. Well, why am I running for Congress? The person I'm running against is Rush Holt, probably one of the most progressive congressmen in the United States Congress, the House of Representatives. A very liberal Democrat. He's been there for 14 years. He calls himself a proud progressive. My husband and I raised 5 children in New Jersey, and I think it's getting harder and harder. One of them just got married at a beautiful wedding on Saturday. Her husband is about to join the Army. He's going to be an air traffic controller. And she's going to move back into my house for the 6 months when he's gone. Why? You can't afford an apartment here by yourself. So she's going to move back in until they get on their feet and go back out again. And this is something that wouldn't have happened maybe 30 years ago. It seems like backwards. Somebody gets married and moves back into your house. But it's a dysfunction in Washington that is partly to blame for how hard it is for our children. And this doesn't have to be. So if we would return the federal government to its constitutional roots and limit the powers of the tax and regulatory burden that increase the cost of living would be in check, the nation could be returned to its former glory. A better economy, affordable taxes, less regulation, and yes, access to all for affordable health care is what we need. That's why I'm going. I have some brochures over there, and you know what it takes to win a congressional seat. So anything you can do to help. The first thing I need is the funding, but then after that, I'll go around to the district. I have a great team here that's already been put together to make this happen. This is going to be a 2-month campaign like that last one, but now I have a good 10 more months, and we're going to win. Thank you.
Thank you, Alieta, and also thank you for reminding me about passing the hat. We have a hat over here that we're passing. It's a little donations bag, and we would be very appreciative if Freedom, can you get that pass the hat thing going around to folks if anybody wants to donate. We really appreciate the cost of the room, etc. And since Daniel is my friend, I'm going to ask that he take special note of 2 of our guests, 3 actually. He's already going to be networking with Congressman Lance, and we're really happy. I hope that he would be able to network with Dr. Eck, because I'm sure you have an Hispanic presence in your district. And of course, Chairman John Traier, whose district is probably, what, fully 50% Hispanic, John?
Very close.
Very close. So if you're thinking of expanding into New Jersey, I would say that Passaic County with John Traier would be a good place to start. In fact, let me just, I'm pleased, since I just mentioned him, I want to introduce him. Passaic County GOP Chair, John Traier. I've known John since before the Tea Party movement arose, when he was a respected commissioner on the Clifton Board of Education, which ended in 2011. Passaic County, he was a Passaic County State Committeeman from 1985 till 2005, served on the New Jersey Commission of Civil Rights in 2010, and was elected to Passaic County GOP Chair in 2012. John had a fundraiser this past weekend that Rodney Frelinghuysen attended, and John told me that he's a member of the Holy Trinity, Catholic, Republican, and gay, and that he says, honestly, he does not always feel welcome in the Republican Party, even though he is our county chair, and so we have to find ways to make the tent bigger and more comfortable to everybody who wants to and should be joining. Please welcome Chairman John Traier.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight and with all these distinguished speakers. I I've known Jeff for quite some time, as we're both residents of the city of Clifton, and I first met him when he was having issues with the Clifton Board of Education. So we go back a long time. But I am very excited to be here tonight because I'm a firm believer in the Republican Party and its principles. I've worked very, very hard for the party my entire, both young and adult life. I was a co-chairman of the Young Republican National Federation. I was number 2, and I actually ran for chairman and lost back in 1987. So, you know, I worked for Ronald Reagan. I was a member of the Electoral College in 1988. I'm one of those few people who actually voted for president, and for President George Bush, the father. So it really makes me kind of sad that we are such a minority here in New Jersey today. And I'm not talking about the gay community, I'm talking about the Republican Party. We've sort of lost our mission. We've lost our, you know, supporting the little guy. We've lost our ability to reach out to diverse groups of people. And I'm one of many groups that I think we have that problem with. Clearly the Hispanic communities are the biggest growing communities in New Jersey, and we're just not reaching out. And when I've gone to many community groups, and I've gone to, you know, to try to campaign on behalf of the Republican Party, most people are just not liking the Republican brand. They think we don't like them. They think there's no empathy towards another group. And we never push the issues that we have so in common with them. A good economy, lower taxes, safe streets, personal freedom, and most important, opportunity. That's why a lot of people came to this country, is for opportunity, the ability to make your life better. And we've sort of lost our way, I think, in the Republican Party in not stressing those issues. We fight amongst ourselves far harder and far stronger than we do against the Democrats, who are really changing the whole dynamic of this country. And when I talk about myself as a member of the gay community, 90%, if not more, of my brethren who should be Republicans, who should be with us, they are all independent business people. They are all people who are creative. They are all people who are in their own businesses. And they are not supporting the Republican Party because they perceive that the Republican Party does not like them, does not want to give them the same opportunities that everybody else in this country has. And, you know, you may disagree with the lifestyle, you may not understand the lifestyle, you may not care, but you always have to believe as a Republican and as a member of the Tea Party that individual freedom is the most important thing. And the ability to love who you love is a very important thing. So at the end of the day, I think we do have a lot more in common. And we have to start demonizing folks that we don't necessarily understand, know, or empathize with. And I was very excited to hear Daniel Garza and the things that he's doing. The conservative movement needs to be more populist, not more liberal, but more people-oriented. More caring about the little guy and seeing the little guy get ahead. Creating opportunity for people. Showing people who are stuck in the inner city, who are poor, who can't speak the language as well as everybody else. The education systems are failing. And not empathizing with them that their life can be better, because that's what we're all about as Republicans. And conservatives, for that matter. So I think we have a lot in common, and we have a lot that we need to keep that discussion going. Whether or not you understand the gay community, it's here, and it's going to stay. And one of the major reasons that states like New Jersey and California are no longer voting Republican is this issue. You know, if you look at Southern California, it was a bastion of Republicanism back in the 70s and 80s. But then all of a sudden we've lost the Hispanic vote, we've lost the gay vote, we've lost all these things. You know, you don't have to be a liberal, you know, you don't have to be gay and be a liberal. A lot of us are conservatives. A lot of us are business people. A lot of us want to see a country of values. But whenever we talk about family values, it always means you got to be against a gay person living their life. So I think it's very important for us to understand that I think we have a lot of work to do as both a Republican Party and as a conservative movement. If we are ever going to become the majority in a state like New Jersey again, we've got to change and be able to reach out to folks and reach out to them at their level. And younger people, particularly, I want to hear what the millennial guy has to say, but the millennials are not becoming Republican. They're voting Republican, and depending where they live, they may be voting Republican in bigger numbers than in other places, but they're not becoming involved with our party for that very reason. I think what they sense to be is an intolerance. We need to change, and we need to be able to reach out to them. And we're not talking to them. Boy, Obama sure figured out how to talk to them, didn't he, in 2008? He came out of nowhere to beat Hillary Clinton. Why? Because he knew how to talk to young people in the ways that they needed to be talked to. And I'm talking social media, I'm talking about, no one under 30 reads a newspaper like I do. I look forward to the newspaper being delivered in the morning. Nobody reads a newspaper who's under 30. They just don't. They're on their computer, they're looking at their blogs, they're looking at their websites, they're looking at, various things. And that's where we have to figure out how to communicate with them. So, I've given you a lot to talk about, and I'm sure you'll have questions for me. But it was a pleasure to be here today. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, John. And John knows this as well as anybody because he's also a county chair, and he's seen from his colleagues that all too often the Republican Party has had a knee-jerk reaction, whether it's Hispanic or millennial. If you don't fit into some preconceived good old boy network image, they're not going to be as welcoming, or they haven't always been as welcoming as they need to learn to be, as we need to learn to be. And with that, one of the things that we mentioned in order for this all to change is that we have to reach a couple of demographics. And that's why I've had 4 different ones here today. The last one is the millennial, and that is Hank Lyon. Hank, I can't find my cheat sheet, so I'm going to wing this. Hank is the youngest elected freeholder in New Jersey, and we had something to do with that. In 2012, he came to a meeting like this, and there were enough people here and enough people who received our newsletter and enough people who knew that he was running against the 12-year incumbent that he won by an astounding total of 4 votes. And it was contested for months?
9 months.
9 months. Hank, college?
I went to the College of the Holy Cross.
Graduated with honors, physics and
economics.
What a great combination. And a lot of his friends, given his age, of course, are Democrats. So he, by dint of the fact that he's a Republican freeholder in Morris County, please, Republicans, listen to what this young man has to say and learn how we have to talk to his peers. And I get that from my son. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I think my generation is important for 2 reasons. One, we are a significant voting bloc right now in today's elections, but if what we're talking about now doesn't change and we don't start to get to the hearts of the millennials, then in the future, obviously, when we become the leaders of this country, even if we accomplish our goals now, it'll all be for naught in the end. I actually think right now is a good time for conservatives when it comes to millennials, and the reason is with the Obamacare rollout. But before I talk about how Obamacare changed, I think the dynamics with young people, I want to talk about my experience with young people up until that point. Throughout school, I was always the token conservative. All of my friends were liberal. I do agree they're not registering to be Republicans, they're not registering to be Democrats, they are independents, but it means that they're liberals. They tend to be much more apolitical than my parents' generation. For instance, my parents and I will talk and they'll say, back in the 70s, everybody was talking about it, but what was going on in the 70s? We had Vietnam and we had the draft, so it was somewhat understandable. But as an example, one of my very good friends, she went to a great college, Boston University, very intelligent, has a good job now. I think it was probably about 2011 I was talking to her. And I said, hey, Kat, what do you think of the Tea Party? You know, whether you like it, don't like it, just what are your thoughts on it? And she actually said, what is the Tea Party? And I really couldn't believe it. I was flabbergasted that this highly educated young woman had no idea what the Tea Party was. It was actually, it opened my eyes. I do agree that my generation in general tends to look at Republicans as not caring about other people. But I think that's not because we don't care about people, but it's because when you go to college and they talk about liberal ideas and they write it up on the blackboard and put all this amazing theory on the board and show that if you use government you can accomplish every single aim that you could possibly want, they then look at conservatives and Republicans and say, gosh, if those people oppose those policies, well, they must not be good people. If we can get affordable health care for everybody, why would you possibly be against it? And so if you put it in that mindset, in the college atmosphere, in a high school atmosphere, you understand why young people are liberal. But where they're wrong is that it's not affordable. It ends up not covering everybody. It looks great on a blackboard, but when you bring it to the real world, it totally falls apart. When Obamacare came out, I think we were all looking at it with great interest. We wanted to see what its effect was on the economy. We wanted to see how well it rolled out. They were saying it was a train wreck months, years before it happened. I think everybody was curious to see if that would come to fruition. And what did we see? It was a total disaster for multiple reasons. First, we had the website that just did terrible. It crashed. But then we started seeing 5 million people have their insurance canceled. And I think my generation, the reason I said that it's actually a good moment right now for millennials, is I think my generation for the first time really saw in concrete terms how government promises a lot, but then delivers a little. And most of my friends, the overwhelming number of my friends are liberals. And I started asking, particularly when I knew I was going to come to this, I started making phone calls and saying, what do you think of Obamacare? What are your thoughts on the Democratic Party right now? And here's what I can report. Some good news, some bad news. The good news, they were extremely unhappy with Obamacare. They mocked Obamacare. And oftentimes they say, if you really want to defeat somebody, ridicule them. And at that point, it's very difficult to come back from ridicule. They recognized it was a complete disaster. That's great news. Now, the bad news is when I followed that up with something to the effect of, does it make you want to be a Republican? The answer was no, not yet. But I think what it does is this is a moment where it's planted a seed. And it's possible that we now have an opportunity as Republicans, as conservatives, if we can water that seed and continue to show how not only are Democrat policies bad, but if we can now come in, swoop in, and show how our policies are in fact good, and how our policies actually make people's lives better, then I really do actually think we have an opportunity right now to make a big dent in young people and really start to change their minds. I saw a little bit of this right after I graduated from college, but it just wasn't nearly as profound. I had one roommate, very liberal, always debating back and forth, and he would say, Hank, you don't care about anybody, and I'd say, that's not true, it's just liberal policies don't help people, and we would go back, we were friends, but we clearly disagreed. And then he graduated and started to work and realized, oh my gosh, so much of my taxes go to the government, I can barely live. And he started to say, I understand what you were saying a little bit better now. But I think Obamacare has taken that and it's amplified it dramatically. And then on top of that, my generation has a gigantic unemployment rate. We can't find jobs. I joke with my friends that I have to run for office at this point now to actually get a job. I mean, it's become quite depressing. And so all of these things, with entering the workforce, which naturally I think makes you more conservative, then entering the workforce but finding that you can't get a job, and then getting crushed with Obamacare, I really think it's setting up an opportunity for Republicans, for the people in this room, to go in and make converts of young people and start to change them over to our ideas. So that way when we argue amongst ourselves or when we argue with Democrats, that way when we fight these battles today, they end up being successful also in the long term. We can win them at both times. Just out of curiosity, by a show of hands, how many people in this room get really frustrated with young people for going like this at all times?
How about old people too?
Yes, many people.
Many people.
Many people in this room feel that way. Young people really care about technology. Obama won because he recognized that right here, young people spend a tremendous amount of time. I actually heard, and I actually saw the ad, they advertised for Barack Obama's 2008 election in video games where you would be driving the car, the billboards that you would go by would actually be President Obama advertisements. They got extremely creative. They're really good with social media. Young people care about technology. Whether we agree or disagree with how much they use it, they really care about it. And that's where I think Obamacare is, I think the #1 reason young people find Obamacare to be a disaster is the rollout itself. The 5 million people having their insurance canceled, that's probably the bigger deal. But for young people, they just saw it as complete government ineptness. The government couldn't come in and even make a basic website. We're on Facebook all the time. The government can't even make a website to function even somewhat properly. For almost $1 billion. When I polled informally my friends, that was the sticking point. They were made fun of on late night television. Almost everywhere you looked, people were mocking the Democratic Party, and I really do think that it made a big dent in young people's views on government. And I think what it comes down to is in order to have effective government, you have to have two things. You have to have good policy, and you have to have good politics. I think we have the good policy. Now we have to get the good politics, learn how to go after all different types of groups, learn what they care about, whether it's social media or whatnot. Learn how to use that language and reach out to people and show how our policy is better than our opponent's policy. And we can win that. We all know that our policy is better. Our policies don't cause millions and millions of people to lose their health insurance. Our policies actually lower the cost. It's a little bit more not straightforward. It takes individual initiative. It's not top down, it's bottom up. It's not necessarily as clear to see, but when we implement our policies, we get great results. And that's what people ultimately see. I think we have to work on finding the politics, finding the articulation to share that with all different demographics. But I think we really see a case study with Obamacare and how negative of an impact it can have if you don't get your politics right, in this case on young people. But we can use that for everybody. With that, I think I'm going to sit down. I think we're going to have questions on the panel. So I'll actually hold off on the question until we get back up here.
The third thing you need are good candidates. And Hank Lyon is a generation of great candidates coming up. And I want to thank him. I want to thank my son, Freedom, who's also a millennial, for paying for my health insurance. So, hopefully that will help drive the next election. Make sure when you see a millennial, you thank them also. And with that, first, thank to this great panel. Rob, I want to also thank you incredibly much, and do know that even though both congressmen could not stay for all of this, they will get your presentation so that you get it to me. I will make sure that they get it, and so they will have heard from these great speakers that represent 4 very distinct demographics. With that, I'll open this up for questions.
My main question is not really a question, it's to give you a little insight. I think a lot of the conservative movement and Tea Party movement is frustrated with the Republican Party because when Democrats are attacking you, you're silent. You're silent as far as calling them out on their lies and confronting them. If you would confront them, they wouldn't know what to answer because everything they've been doing for this past 6 years have been nothing but lies, and no one's been confronting them that and calling them out on lies. And calling them on their ideology is not democratic, but communist.
Rob, thank you for that, too. Can I ask folks for questions?
I just want to say, you have to counteract their arguments. You have to make them look foolish and stupid. And what we've been frustrated with is the silence that no one's confronting them. No one's calling them out. That's the main problem here. It's not we don't agree with you or we're against you. But if you're not going to fight and you're going to allow a bully to pick on you, like when I was a young kid, because I'm 6'5" now, but I was always terribly skinny and gawky, and I was always picked on. My father says, until you fight back, they're going to keep picking on you. It's the same with bullying today. You got to speak up, and that's what we want. We want a voice that's going to fight back, not be silent.
And we have the voices. We've had some great panelists, and John, take it to heart when he said you really good ideas here. Sir, and then sir.
My daughter is a pediatric nurse practitioner. This is for Dr. Eck. She works down. Thank you. She works down in St. Petersburg, and she sees families who pay nothing because they're on Medicaid. And then she is in conversation with the mother, and the mother says, I'm going to Europe with my 6 kids next month. How do you plan on making sure that this fraud stops? How do we do it? Even our illustrious president, I saw him on tape, said in Medicare, there's $100 billion worth of fraud every year. What do you think about that? You may not know now, but critical fraud.
Questioners, please come up so folks can...
What I will be suggesting is that we develop these clinics that are free clinics that are dotted across the land where people will turn to when they're sick and they're poor and they have no place to go. Instead of going to the government and signing up for this card that's kind of all the health care for all, instead you're going to go to a place where you're going to just get the help. And it's not an entitlement. Now this is real entitlement reform. Whereas right now, do you know what happens? When a person gets signed up for Medicaid, they may be a perfectly healthy person. $5,000 goes from the taxpayer to a Medicaid HMO. That's a place for a huge amount of fraud. And as long as the money is flowing, there's the opportunity for fraud. When the money stops, and now the people just get care when they need care, when they can't afford it, that's the way you're going to get rid of all that fraud. So that's what I would propose.
And I think when we were working together, you figured out it was something like 100, 120 NGFCs, non-governmental free clinics, could take care of all of New Jersey after the Zarephath model. A working model, folks, so this is not theoretical. This is something that Alieta and her husband, Dr. John, have been doing for 10 years, right? And it's grown. Sir? If you have questions, please come up here to the mic. It'd be easier.
A Montville Tea Party member, very proud to be so.
Thank you for coming.
I was going to ask Hank a question, but he happens to be a neighbor of mine, and he knows too much about my personal life. A question, though, I think it was for Mr. Garcia.
Garza.
Garza, I apologize. He, I guess, slipped out with something before which gave me some thought. He said something about a possible conflict between whites and Hispanic. Is that
He's not here, and
okay,
I don't...
can't defend himself, but it was somewhat to that effect, okay? It was us whites against, you know, the Hispanic community. I've heard this unbelievably stupid, idiotic reference made a number of times where it's whites against Hispanics, whites against blacks, whites against, believe it or not, Jews. When I went to school, there were 3 races, period. There was the black race, there was the white race, and there was the Mongoloid race. That was it. On this globe...
Sir, what's your question?
Yeah, the question is, instead of constantly referring to minority groups as different races or different skin colors, we need to get a clarification on this.
I'll clarify it. There's one race, the human race.
Well, no, there's 3 colors.
Is there part of that wasn't clear? One race, the human race.
Well, it goes beyond that.
I just wanted to say that, you know, a big tent and inclusiveness is a great thing, and I'm all for it. But, you know, there comes a point where you have to have principles, and some, you know, I know a lot of people, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that, you know, you can't give in on all of them. For instance, if speaking out against illegal immigration and wanting to penalize it turns off some Hispanic voters, all I can say is so be it. And if saying that a child is best off being raised by a husband and a wife as opposed to two husbands turns off some gay voters, again, so be it. You know, to me, now of course, if you don't agree with my values, that's fine, but if you do, and you're willing to compromise, to me that means that being the member of the Republican Party or any political party is more important than your faith or your country, and I just can't subscribe to that.
I guess what I'm trying to say when we talk about values is the fact that, you know, people, you may disagree with my values and I may disagree with your values, but I think at the end of the day, if we don't believe in individual freedom, if we don't believe that we can live our lives the way we need to, I think that's going to be a problem for you as a Republican Party or as a conservative movement, because it's saying that your value system has to be followed 100% in order for us to all be together.
No, but the thing is, I'm all for individual liberty. Anyone who tries to break down your door and tell you how to live, I have a problem with.
But nobody's telling you how to live. But I think you're
saying that there's no such thing as any societal values.
No, I'm not. Not at all. Because I think that sometimes our societal values are evolving a little bit. First of all, as a gay man, I never thought I could adopt a child. I've been with my partner 26 years. And back when, I didn't think I could adopt a child. I wish I could have, because I think I would have made a phenomenal parent.
Yeah.
But, you know, because I think one thing you want for your children is to love them and to do the best you can to make them survive. As, you know, I think any parent will tell you that. And whether you're their biological parent or not, you want to see the best for them. You want to see them educated. You want them to be good and honest and, you know, and live their lives appropriately. But, you know, I think when you say things that you're saying, you know, I can show you gay couples over and over who've raised phenomenal children, and they raise straight children. You know, they're phenomenal parents. And I think saying things that you're saying, I understand where you're coming from. But if you had a child that was gay, you know, I think you're closing a lot of doors for that child. And I don't think it's a choice. I don't think being gay is a choice.
Can you prove that?
What?
Can you prove that?
No, I can't prove that. But I'll tell you one thing. With all the crap that I put up with in my life, if I could have been straight, believe me, I would have done it.
But I can't prove it either. You can't prove it, so leave it at that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Why are you going to push it on people?
But that's
But I'm
the
not
thing.
imposing it on
Nobody's
you.
pushing it on anybody.
I don't want you to be gay. I really don't. Truly, I don't.
I didn't invite John
No,
here.
but I'm not saying that, but the whole system is pushing you to be a certain way.
You know what? I did not invite John here to impose, prove, or push anything, just to say that other people who are gay, and that is the only thing that is different from him and me, or maybe you or something that is nobody's business, is what difference does that make? Why should that make anybody not feel welcome in the Republican Party? Same thing with Hispanic or black or any other group. This is about freedom, and mostly Tea Parties are about economic freedom. I don't, did you have a question, by the way?
Nah, I'm just really tired of the identity politics. You start thinking people as certain groups, this group, black people, white people. When are people just going to start thinking of each other as Americans?
Right.
You know what? And I think that's really valid. The unfortunate thing is that when we quantify election races and you see that 3/4 of Hispanics voted for Democrats, even though by all measure their interest should have been with the Republican Party, you have to say, well, why? What can we do to attract this demographic to our side that really serves their interests better, where we look out more for the economics, etc.
I wanted to take just a moment to respond to the gentleman's point with immigration. I'm not an expert on it, so in that sense I wish Daniel was here still. But here's my thought. Right now I've heard the statistics are something like in order to legally immigrate to this country, it takes 5 years. I actually know a family, it's one of my favorite places to eat. It's down in South Orange. It's a Mexican restaurant, phenomenal salsa. It's my absolute favorite Mexican place around. They have been struggling to, part of them are here illegally, but the other part of the family wants to come here. They've been struggling probably for like a decade. And I think the single biggest thing that we could do to fix the immigration problem is to make that time period shrink drastically. If it went from 5 years down to a year, over time, the problem in a lot of ways would go away because I think people would start to immigrate here legally. And I actually started to research it. Why is it so difficult? You know, I started asking my friends, millennials, I said, why do you think it's so hard? Oh, well, Republicans are old white people who don't want people to immigrate to this country. And so how do they stop them? They make a bureaucratic disaster of it. And I didn't really like that idea, so I actually started doing research on it. And this is what I actually came to find. One of the biggest opponents of legal immigration are unions, because they don't want immigrants to come in and then compete with them for labor.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we have an opportunity here. If we could reduce the amount of time that it comes in, we could fix the immigration problem. And it's the Democrat Party, the branches of the Democrat Party that are preventing that. Yet I don't think that Hispanic people know that. I don't think that millennials know that. If we could go out and demonstrate that and share that and articulate that, I think that we could actually start to win back on the immigration issue. That's my personal opinion about it.
Rodney? You know, I turned you off.
Hank, with regard to immigration, you guys, you millennials who are graduated, you've got tons of student debt. You can't get a job. And Christie just allowed for in-state tuitions for undocumented and illegal. That's hurting you guys.
Let me get that. Let me take that one. Excuse me, but I'm a single parent, padre soltero, y mi niño es mitad colombiano, entonces tuve que aprender para defenderme con él. I understand the Hispanic community. My friends, like with Daniel Garza, and we have discussed this. In many cases, the undocumented that you're talking about have no idea that they are undocumented. They were brought here illegally, yes they were, at 2 years old, 3 years old, and it never ever came up because it's not something that happens. And I'll give you an analogy. A lot of times adopted, let me finish please. A lot of times adopted children don't know either. So in many cases, the first time that these children know that they are not legal, even though their entire lives, except for a year or two, is in America and it is not their fault, is when they go to apply for tuition or scholarship money. My thought, and I've talked about this with the congressmen who were here and Daniel Garza, is this is a relatively very small number of people. Nobody's talking about their parents. Nobody is talking about gangbangers. Nobody is talking about violent felons. Nobody is offering them anything, let alone citizenship. But that small, innocent number of people who came through are totally Americanized in every way. Even in their minds, they don't know. I think we should find the money because that single outreach really resonates in the Hispanic community. You don't have to agree.
No.
You don't have to agree. That's fine. That's fine.
That's why the Republicans are becoming Democrats.
No. Why are you incentivizing more to come? Because people who have been here 15 years who have gone through the public school system and are American, that's the criterion.
You're wrong.
Okay, and I say you're wrong. So let's agree to disagree on that. What next?
Thank you very much, Jeffrey, for this whole event. You've been putting on a lot of events, and what it's mostly about is information, informing people, letting people know what we can do to take back our country, because it's gotten real bad. So I just want to shed some light on what was spoken about earlier. You saw that the two congressmen were very favorable on this school choice issue. And it's true that Congressman Frelinghuysen actually led that battle for that little pilot program in D.C. And the first, as soon as the Obama administration came in, they killed it. And it's true what he said about the Speaker Boehner when they came in with the majority in the House. The first thing they did was Boehner led the battle to reinstall that little pilot program. Actually expanded from 1,700 students to 2,000 students, from 7,500 to 8,000.
Israel, question.
Well, my question is really to the people, and it's really to inform the people and tell them that the question really is, why doesn't this thing happen? Why don't we get a real choice in D.C. and change the whole face of the country? Because the Democrats wouldn't know where to hide themselves if they came up with such a bill. And the reason is that we're not active. They need to hear from us. So that's what my point is. The congressmen need to hear from us.
And I echo that Congress, the newspapers, your friends and neighbors need to hear from you.
Just like to take not to get back to a sore subject, but it is a very controversial subject, but the gentleman, we've been talking about the gay issue. Not only that, but I think some of the other issues that you're saying...
Traier.
Yes, thank you. That we are being accused of not liking this or that or the other segment. In all due respect, sir, it is the Democratic Party, that is the line of the Democratic Party, that loves to demonize different segments of the conservative community. And I think many of us are tired of being labeled as anti-gay, anti-black, anti-Hispanic. We are not. We know we're not. The left knows that that works to our advantage, their advantage, and to ours. So we are not that. But to the issue of gay, which we've talked about a lot tonight, I know that you know that Christians who believe what the Bible says believe that homosexuality is wrong. Now, I don't want to get into a discussion with you about whether it's right or wrong. But the issue is not whether conservatives don't like gays, because let me give you an example of Loretta Weinberg's bill in the state of New Jersey, which she's trying to get through the legislature right now to make gay marriage legal in New Jersey, despite the fact that the court gave it to us. That bill would not only make it legal, it would take away religious freedom protections from Christians, so that if your pastor wanted to talk against homosexuality in the pulpit, or he didn't want to marry a gay couple, or you allow them to use his church hall, that would become hate speech, sir. So what we don't object to, we have gay marriage, we had civil unions, but what we object to is the religious freedom and our First Amendment rights that are being trampled by the gay community, which represents statistically about 4% of the population. I'm almost finished. Hang on, I'll get to my question. So my point is that is what we object to. It's not that we don't like gays. We do not like our religious rights, to say so, to be discriminated against. And I guess I would ask you for what your response is to that.
As a Republican county chairman.
Well, I could say it as a Christian, I could say it as a Catholic, I could say it as many things. I think religious freedom is absolutely imperative in our country. And I believe in it, and I believe in the tolerance of it. I live in an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood, okay? I don't believe in any, I don't believe a lot in the customs, I don't believe in a lot of the, the beliefs of their subsystem. But I believe in their right to believe in it. And I believe in their right to and it gets very tricky. It gets very tricky. We live in a very pluralistic society where we all have a lot of very different religious values. And I respect the right of, of religions to do that. What I think is more important is individual freedom here.
Mm-hmm. Right,
and
that's my point.
my right to live my life, your right to live your life.
We're not arguing with your right to
Yeah,
live your life.
no, but where I think it gets very tricky, and what liberals always try to push, is they're always trying to push their view of the world on everybody else.
Right.
And they assume we as conservatives do the same. But I'm just saying there's got to be a little bit more sensitivity on behalf of conservatives that there are differences on these issues.
We understand that.
But you're not addressing my
I know that. I know
question.
that.
We're being, as she said, demonized.
You're not addressing my question.
Well, I'm being demonized being a Republican. I'm being demonized being the patsy who the Republicans put up there. But I believe very strongly in the Republican Party. I believe very strongly in the values of the party and of individual freedom and the ability to have my own economic life and not having the government control that. That's why everybody came to this country.
But what I'm asking, if you could just clarify, what I'm saying is that we're concerned that the left, which is not the Republican Party, but it is, well, yeah. But the left wants to deny religious freedoms to Christians. Well, look at Hobby Lobby, that's a whole other issue too. But in the area of gay rights, because they want to make it a hate crime. If you don't think that is the case, study what's happened in Massachusetts.
But Barbara, isn't
where
your beef with them?
Well, listen, for 10 years there's been gay marriage in
He
Massachusetts.
didn't want his first grader taught about gay marriage. He was thrown in jail overnight. His child was taken away from him because the law allows it, makes it legal. So therefore, to speak against it becomes hate crime. That's the question I'm trying to.
Well, it depends what the speech is when you talk against it, whether it becomes hate crime or not. And that's a fine line. We'll go into another point though. Can I say one thing? For 10 years, gays have been allowed to be married in Massachusetts, and the world has not come to an end. It has not ruined Christian marriages. It has not ruined heterosexual marriages. It hasn't done whatever. The real life. Let me finish my point. I was very respectful, and I let the lady make her point. I'd like to make my point. What I'm saying is a party. Why gay folks do not vote Republican and do not vote conservative, even though every reason they should be, is because this very discussion that we're having. Allow me to get married civilly. I don't want to get married in your church. Your church will not allow me to get married, and that's fine. That's religious freedom.
The bill would not allow that, is my point.
Yeah, it would. This gay marriage bill has a religious exemption. What it doesn't allow is, and I disagree with this as well, places that are for public, like if the Knights of Columbus comes and rents it to anybody who comes to them, they also have to do it to a gay marriage. And I think that's a fine line. I don't really care. If they don't want to marry me,
I'm talking about churches.
well, churches don't have to. They have religious freedom.
But under Loretta Weinsberg's in New Jersey, if you're familiar with it,
The bill that was passed and the governor vetoed had a religious exemption
she's
in
trying
it.
to put it back in again and
Yeah.
take religious protections out.
Let's advance this.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you very not you, John, and not at all. Who has not asked a question?
That's fine.
We're missing the big picture here. What's pissing us off is that these different issues, whether it's gays, illegal immigration, etc., are being rammed down our throats.
By whom?
By the politicians. If you think the politicians care about gays or blacks or Hispanics, you're drinking the Kool-Aid. All they care about is their power and staying in office.
Yeah,
So what I'm
Thank you.
So what I'm saying is that we should be thinking as Americans, and as a Republican for many years, although I am weakening, the Republican Party will never, ever win a major election if they keep dumping on the conservative movement. Now I'm going to make one point here to show you how they managed to aggravate people like me who have been loyal to the party for 50-something years. 10 hours before the recent election with Lyon, the Republicans held a rally on the Green. 10 hours before the election. Where the hell were they for 4 months? Number one.
Right.
Number two, and I wish he was here to defend himself because I'd like to ask him the same question. Rance Priebus gets up and tells you about how they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. So when he came down, I said to him, Mr. Priebus, I have one question for you. Why aren't you supporting the conservative movement who's been supporting you for years? Well, we are. I said, 10 hours before the election, where the hell have you been for 4 months? So, humana, I thought I was watching a TV show. I asked him again. I said, you will never win another major election without our support. And you're managing to dump on the core of your party's beliefs, okay? Because supposedly we believe the same thing. I said, so what are you going to support? And the Republican Party going to support the conservative movement? He walked away from me. Now that's not the first time.
I was there.
Right. That's not the first time that's happened to me.
Okay,
Every time. Okay. All right. Anyhow, you get the point, right? Don't fall for the Kool-Aid. They don't give a flying fig about any of us. It's as simple as that.
Just so you know, they are hearing this because we had contact recently with the RNC. We had an event where we had the deputy secretary, who is black. He's Juan Williams' son is 24 years old and a black conservative. He was at, so he works with for Rance Priebus. We were at an event yesterday where there's a fundraiser for a person who does fundraising for Rance Priebus, Leonard Lance. They take words that they hear back to Rance Priebus to let him know basically just what you said. So thank you for saying that. Is there somebody else that has not asked the question yet?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I want to make sure everybody can hear me.
Just hold the microphone.
You know, there's a few big things that we haven't talked about. Obamacare we talked about. That's a big thing. By the way, when the government gets involved, I worked for the government for about 30 years. When the government gets involved in anything, it costs an extra amount of money. Somewhere between 20 and maybe 35, 40%, depending on what it is. I'll get to the question. The question is, why aren't we talking about Benghazi? Why aren't we talking about Benghazi? How come Hillary isn't in jail? How come Obama is not in jail? They lied to Congress. It's a federal offense. They lied to the American people. Is that not a federal offense?
If it was George Bush, he'd be impeached.
Well, regardless of that. Well, how come they're allowed to lie? And most of the people in this country, 99, 95% of the people in this country only see the news on channel 2, 4, 7, or CNN. That's it. They don't read the paper. They don't do anything else. Just a minute. Just a minute.
You asked a question. I want to give you a quick, unsatisfactory answer.
Well, I want to give you more questions. And the other question is the IRS. This IRS scandal is a big issue. And that's only 2 of the scandals. How many other scandals are there? How can we let that son of a bitch, excuse the expression, stay in office when all he does is lie? How come nobody holds it?
And here's the quick answer, that if 3+ million people who voted for John McCain, of all people, did not sit on their hands and stay home during the election of 2012, Obama would not be in office for a second term. So if you want to look at to blame somebody, it's us. More of us stayed home. Not saying you. Whoa. Listen, before you say no, I'm not saying you. I'm saying that the number of 3 million, whether you like it of us, right of center people did not go out to vote. That's why. Well, the why is, that's a great question, why. And when you get the answer, when we get the answer, we'll win the next election.
I said that he was for universal health care. Romney came out, Mark Levin said Romney came out after the fact, said he was for universal health care. So what choice do the people really have? We went out and voted, but what about the other people when they see no difference?
If they didn't see it, they're as bad as universal health care as bad as...
under Romney anyway. He came out and said he was going to do it. Mark Levin said so on his radio show.
My question doesn't go back to 2008 when Obama was first elected. My question is now. He's president now. How come he's not in jail?
Because the leadership in Washington, Republican leadership in Washington is oppressive.
Why is he
That's right. You have a question?
I'd like to know why our Governor Christie didn't just appoint Lonigan.
Here. And if I could have made it happen, believe me, I would have made it happen, or I would have asked him to appoint Alieta Eck.
You know why? Because he's too busy holding Obama's hand.
There you go.
That's why. There's your answer.
But you know what? Don't get mad at anybody over here. We're not happy with that. We're not happy with that. But
because of their own fault. You said it 5 minutes ago. 30 million sex. Why did they stay home? Why?
And I'll add that my complaint.
This means the candidate isn't any better than what we have in office now.
All right, thank you.
Somehow I think that lady is angry at me or us for things that didn't happen. I assure you that the governor does not call and ask me for my opinion before he makes those appointments, although I wish he would. Anybody else?
Jeff, the next meeting we bring gloves. Okay? We can have a 3-rounder.
Great. In that case, I want to thank Hank Lyon, Freeholder Lyon, and Chairman John Traier, as well as our other guests. And thank you all for coming and participating. Really appreciate everybody. And Rob, you and Mom Goldberg, thank you all very much.